We've been known for our office furniture and for our automotive suppliers, but I think we're seeing something much more than that here at Woodward and at so many other places around. You know, this is cutting edge aerospace technology that is here in West Michigan, whether it's here at Woodward or Arconic or other places like that. And we're so proud to show it off. I highly recommend go about 15 miles that way and hit Lake Michigan. If you're not from around here, you definitely will be coming back if you haven't been here before. But I want to thank a couple of folks. David, your leadership here locally is very appreciated. The Colonel here, by the way, his I don't know if I can out you on this. All right, his call sign is Troll. Now, he did tell me he was going to have to explain that over a beer at some point, so it must be a really good story, probably with a bridge and you flying underneath it when you weren't supposed to or something. But the Colonel, I want to say on behalf of all of us, thank you for your service to our country and the men and women that you represent and who have served in the uniform. And we deeply appreciate your service to our country. I think we need to give him a round of applause. You know, actually, my family's got a long tie and history to this, not only this city, but to this particular location. And I'm seeing former Mayor Hoagland back there, who's been a very good friend of my late father, and Mayor Pro Tem Gruppen, and City Manager, and a few of my other mayor friends and local government folks. And Les, I'm sure, remembers this. My dad, who was a old Army Air Corps veteran, this is how long ago it goes, was in a B-24 crash in World War II. So before there was even the Air Force, Dad was a part of that. But he always loved flying. You would think that maybe that might have deterred him from that. But Dad always loved flying. And there was two things he was so proud of. Gentex and what was happening next door and the growth that was happening, and Woodward. And when they came, and we were talking about that, I guess David and I were talking about that, in the early 70s, in 72, there was the first sort of introduction here in Zeeland, and in 76 with the consolidation of that. I remember my dad coming home with a model of a B-52 and was so proud that Zeeland had that connection in with that airframe and what was going on, and it really sort of tied him back in. And I was pretty young when all that was happening, but it made a deep impact. And I had the pleasure, the honor of serving as the state representative for this area as well. And believe we did an event similar to this with Pratt and Whitney back a number of years ago. And again, to just sort of reconnect, it really was special and important. I had a third connection now, very recently, to this particular F-35 project, and that was the honor to go and be part of the commissioning of the Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier just a couple of weeks ago down in Norfolk. And in fact, I brought two of my junior staffers, my son Will, who's going to be a freshman in high school, and Seeger, who's going into 6th grade. They were a part of that as well, and our family got to tour the Gerald R. Ford with Stephen and Jack Ford and their families.
Wow.
And a little aside, it's interesting, if you ever get a chance, you need to go do this. They've got this great display of the history and the life of Gerald R. Ford, including his old uniform when he was a Navy officer, and how he literally ignored the order to abandon ship on the aircraft carrier that he was on, convinced the captain to instead fight the fires. He went down into the hold, fought and led the fight, and saved this ship. He had quite a storied history of all this. And here we are with these 19 and 20-year-old sailors explaining to the Ford family the importance of Gerald R. Ford. And they were so kind and generous, and at one point Steve said, "You know, I think you knew Dad as well as we did." It was really quite touching and special. But what was so awesome was going up onto that flight deck, and 4.5 acres of floating America out there. And on the very front of the ship was the F-35B, the Marine version of this. And we were touring with former Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld and former Secretary of Defense and Vice President Cheney and the Ford family. And going up there and seeing this up close and personal. I wish I could have put a couple of my photos up and a little of my video of that. And I got a chance to talk to a number of these young Marines and young sailors who were working on this. And one of the young Marines described himself as a crayon eater. He said, you know, it's amazing that a crayon eater like me is allowed to work on an aircraft like this. And I looked at him, it's like, you're no crayon eater, I can tell you that. Yeah, that generation of those men and women in uniform, they literally are on the cutting edge of technology, and they know what they are doing. And what I'm always amazed at is the responsibility that this country hands to those 19 and 20 and 21-year-olds. And then young pilots. How old were you when you first went in, Colonel? 27. You know, we've got our folks in their mid-20s that are flying this this aircraft, and they ain't cheap, folks. They're not cheap, but they are vital to our defense, and it really is impressive to see how this is going to be used and is being used around the world already, as we are once again pushing and showing the preeminence of the U.S. And our influence and effect on this world. And you know, there's a great line from that commissioning. We had the president was there, the acting secretary at the time, acting secretary Stackley, had one of the best lines of the day when he turned to President Trump and said, you know, Mr. President, there's a former president that said we need to speak speak softly and carry a big stick. Well, today, sir, we give you a big stick with the Gerald R. Ford. And that was absolutely true. And I was struck by the symbolism of that F-35 on the very prow of that big stick. That here was that sharp point to that big stick.
Big long line going up and down, that's the bomb fall line. So if we just turn a little bit to the right, like so, pull the airplane over to it, then roll out, and put our nose to where that airplane symbol is. So right here between the deck, we're now flying straight left. We're flying it slightly over the Mach, and we're at 30,000, almost 31,000 feet.
This would be like what we were at, what 31,000 feet?
Yes, sir. This is what the world looks like. Yeah, it just moves along. 30,000 feet, whether you're doing an airline speed or you're going with Mach speed, it all looks pretty much the same. I flew the SR-71 years ago, and at 70,000 feet is Mach 3. It doesn't look much faster because you don't have no sensation of speed. So you're ready now. So press the red button and then release it. One of the bombs is falling out, automatically targeting it, telling you that, and now we're done. We can just turn our airplane and we're ready to release it. We can take a picture of what's going on. So I just keep turning it right around. As I said before, avoiding the gray areas that we would have been in. And then if one of these airplanes that are out in front of us starts to give